Archangel Michael says, stop worrying about money. But first, there is something you need to do, something most people skip entirely, and it is the reason their worry never actually goes away. Do not close this video. Do not scroll past it. If money has been sitting heavy on your mind, keeping you up at night, following you into conversations that have nothing to do with it, this message found you at exactly the right moment. This is not going to tell you that wealth will simply fall into your lap if you believe hard enough. That is not how life actually works, and deep down, you already know that. What this message will tell you is something more honest, and more useful, something that can actually change the relationship you have with money, starting today. Take a breath. Whatever financial stress you are carrying right now, set it down for just a few minutes. Let this message reach you fully, without the noise of every bill, every number, every worry pulling at your attention. This is for you. Here is the first truth you need to hear. Your constant worrying about money has never once made you more money. Worry feels like preparation. It feels like responsibility, like you are taking the situation seriously by thinking about it constantly. But worry and action are not the same thing, and confusing them has quietly cost you peace without ever actually improving your finances. Worry keeps your mind circling the same fears, again and again, without producing a single new solution. It exhausts you, it disturbs your sleep, it follows you into moments that have nothing to do with money at all, and at the end of all that mental effort, your bank account looks exactly the same as it did before you started worrying. Consider how much of your recent mental energy has gone toward replaying the same financial fears, without any of that mental replay actually producing a new plan, a new decision, or a new action. If you added up all the hours spent worrying this year alone, and compared that total to the hours spent actually taking deliberate financial action, the imbalance might surprise you. This is worth sitting with honestly, not to add guilt on top of existing stress, but simply to notice where your energy has actually been going. This is the first thing to release. Not the responsibility of managing your money carefully, but the belief that worrying about it is somehow helping. It is not. It never was. Here is the second truth. Fear about money often has very little to do with the actual numbers in front of you, and much more to do with old beliefs formed long before you ever earned your first income. Maybe you grew up hearing that money is scarce, that there is never enough, that wanting more makes you greedy. Maybe you watched someone you loved struggle constantly, and some part of you quietly absorbed the belief that struggle is simply what money means, for people like you. These beliefs, formed early, often outside your conscious awareness, continue running in the background of your financial decisions today, even if your actual circumstances have changed significantly since childhood. You might be earning more than you ever have, and still feel the same tight, anxious relationship with money that you felt at a much younger age, simply because the old belief was never actually examined or updated. This is the work heaven is asking you to do first, before worry can genuinely lift. Not ignoring your finances, not pretending everything is fine when it is not, but examining the old beliefs sitting quietly underneath your current financial fear, and asking honestly whether they are still true, or whether they were simply true once, in a different chapter, under different circumstances. Ask yourself, where did I first learn that money is something to fear? Whose voice does that fear sound like? Is it actually your voice, formed from your own adult reasoning, or is it an inherited voice, absorbed long before you had the ability to question it? Here is the third truth. Scarcity thinking and careful money management are not the same thing, though they often get confused. Careful money management looks at your actual numbers honestly, makes a plan, and takes deliberate action. Scarcity thinking operates from constant fear, making decisions based on panic rather than clarity, often leading to choices that create more financial stress rather than less. For example, scarcity thinking might convince you to avoid looking at your finances altogether, because facing the numbers feels too frightening. But avoidance never actually improves a financial situation. It simply delays clarity, allowing small problems to quietly grow into larger ones while you were too afraid to look at them directly. The instruction here is simple, though not always easy. Look directly at your financial situation, exactly as it stands today, without the fog of fear distorting it. Know your actual numbers, your income, your expenses, your debts, your savings, whatever they are. Clarity, even uncomfortable clarity, is always more useful than the vague dread of not knowing exactly where you stand. Here is the fourth truth. You have likely been comparing your financial situation to other people's, and this comparison has made your own situation feel worse than it actually needs to feel. Seeing others who appear to have more, who seem to move through life with financial ease, can quietly convince you that you are failing, even when your own financial journey, viewed honestly and without comparison, might actually be progressing reasonably well. Remember that what you see from others is rarely the complete picture. Debt hidden behind an expensive appearance. Financial stress hidden behind a confident smile. You are comparing your full, complicated financial reality to someone else's curated surface, and that comparison will never give you an accurate measure of your own progress. Release the comparison. Measure your financial journey against your own starting point, your own circumstances, your own progress over time, rather than against an incomplete picture of someone else's life. Here is the fifth truth. Much of your anxiety about money is actually anxiety about safety, about survival, about whether you will be able to care for yourself and the people who depend on you. This is a deeply human fear, one that has existed for as long as humans have needed resources to survive. It is not irrational. It is not a character flaw. It is simply an old, deeply wired part of being human, responding to a very real and legitimate concern. Understanding this can soften the shame that sometimes accompanies financial worry. You are not weak for feeling afraid about money. You are responding to a genuine survival concern, the same way humans have responded to it for thousands of years. The goal is not to eliminate this concern entirely, which would be neither possible nor wise, but to respond to it with clear, deliberate action rather than with paralyzing, circular worry. Here is the sixth truth, and this is the part heaven is asking you to actually do, the action step underneath everything discussed so far. Before worry can genuinely lift, you need one honest, current picture of your actual financial situation. Not an estimate, not an avoidance, an actual, current, honest accounting. This week, sit down and write out exactly what you earn, exactly what you owe, exactly what you spend, and exactly what you have saved, if anything. Do this without judgment, simply as an act of gathering information. Many people avoid this simple exercise for years, not because it is difficult to do, but because facing the numbers feels emotionally overwhelming. But avoidance has never once made a financial situation better. Only honest information, followed by deliberate action, actually improves things over time. Once you have this honest picture, you are no longer fighting a vague, shapeless fear. You are working with actual, specific information, which can be addressed, planned around, and gradually improved. Vague fear feels endless. Specific information, even difficult information, can actually be worked with. Here is the 7th truth. Financial stress often narrows your thinking, making it difficult to see options that might actually be available to you. When you are deeply anxious, your mind tends to focus entirely on threat, on what could go wrong, rather than on creative problem solving. This is a natural response to stress, but it also means that some of your best financial ideas may only become visible once the acute anxiety has settled somewhat. This is part of why addressing the underlying worry matters, not simply for your emotional well-being, though that matters greatly on its own, but also because a calmer mind is genuinely better equipped to notice opportunities, solve problems creatively, and make sound decisions than a mind gripped by constant fear. Here is the 8th truth. You are allowed to want more financial ease without feeling guilty about that desire. Somewhere along the way, many people absorb the idea that wanting more money is inherently greedy or shallow, especially if they were raised with messages equating financial simplicity with virtue. But wanting enough resources to live without constant fear, to support the people you love, to pursue meaningful goals without being blocked by financial constraint, is not greed. It is a reasonable, human desire for stability and freedom. Release the guilt attached to wanting more financial ease. That guilt has not made you more virtuous. It has simply added shame on top of already difficult financial stress, without improving your circumstances in any way. Here is the 9th truth. Small, consistent financial actions matter more than most people realize, even when they feel too small to make a real difference. Setting aside a small amount regularly, even if it feels insignificant compared to your larger financial goals, builds both actual resources over time and, just as importantly, a sense of agency, a felt sense that you are capable of taking deliberate action regarding your finances rather than simply being at the mercy of circumstances beyond your control. This felt sense of agency is not a small thing. It directly counters the helplessness that often accompanies financial anxiety, replacing it, gradually, with evidence that you are capable of influencing your own financial situation, one small action at a time. Here is the 10th truth. Seeking practical help with your finances, whether through free community resources, budgeting tools, or when possible, professional financial guidance, is not a sign of failure. It is simply wisdom. Many people struggle in silence with financial confusion or stress for years, believing they should already know how to manage everything perfectly on their own, without ever having been taught the skills involved. If you were never taught how to budget, how to manage debt effectively, how to plan for the future financially, that is not a personal failing. It is simply a gap in your education, one that can be addressed now, at any point, through learning, without shame attached to the fact that you are learning it later than you might have wished. Here is the 11th truth. The way you talk to yourself about money, silently, in your own head, shapes your financial decisions more than most people realize. If your inner voice constantly says things like "I am terrible with money," "I will never get ahead," "people like me do not become financially stable," that inner narrative quietly influences the choices you make, often steering you away from opportunities or actions that contradict the story you have been telling yourself for years. This does not mean simply repeating positive phrases will magically fix your finances. It means becoming aware of the negative financial narrative running in the background, and gently questioning whether it is actually true, or whether it is simply an old story, repeated so often it started to feel like fact rather than opinion. Here is the 12th truth. Financial stress often isolates people, because money remains one of the most difficult subjects to discuss openly, even with close friends or family. This silence can make your own struggles feel uniquely shameful, as though you are the only one dealing with financial difficulty, when in reality, financial stress touches the vast majority of people at some point in their lives, regardless of how put together their outward appearance might suggest. Breaking this silence, even in small ways, sharing honestly with one trusted person about your financial concerns, can reduce the isolating shame that often makes financial stress feel heavier than the numbers alone would justify. You are not alone in this struggle, even though silence around money often makes it feel that way. Here is the 13th truth. There is a difference between long-term financial goals and daily financial peace, and confusing the two often makes present moments harder than necessary. You do not need to have solved your entire financial future today in order to experience some measure of peace today. Long-term goals, savings targets, debt payoff plans, career growth, these unfold over months and years. Daily peace can be cultivated more immediately, through honest awareness, small deliberate actions, and release of the constant background hum of worry that adds nothing productive to the process. Give yourself permission to work toward long-term financial goals while still allowing some peace into your present days, rather than believing peace must wait until every long-term goal has been fully achieved. Here is the 14th truth. Comparing your current financial chapter to your own past chapters, rather than only to other people, can offer a more useful, encouraging perspective. Consider how far you have actually come, even if progress has been slower or messier than you hoped. Small improvements, skills learned, debts reduced even slightly, habits changed, these deserve acknowledgement, even while larger goals remain unmet. Take a moment to genuinely notice any financial progress you have made, however modest, rather than focusing exclusively on the distance still remaining before you reach your larger goals. Both the progress and the remaining distance are true at the same time. Acknowledging the progress does not mean ignoring the work still ahead. Here is the 15th truth. Financial setbacks, when they occur, are not proof that you are fundamentally bad with money or destined for permanent struggle. Setbacks happen to almost everyone at some point, through circumstances often beyond full personal control, unexpected expenses, economic shifts, health difficulties, and countless other factors. A setback is an event, not an identity. Treating a temporary financial setback as permanent proof of failure tends to increase shame and paralysis, rather than motivating the deliberate action actually needed to recover and move forward. If you are currently experiencing a financial setback, allow yourself to see it as exactly that, a difficult event to navigate, rather than a verdict on your worth or your permanent financial destiny. Here is the 16th truth. Money itself is simply a tool, a resource that allows for exchange and access to needed things, not a measure of your inherent value as a person. This may sound obvious stated plainly, yet many people unconsciously equate their net worth with their self-worth, feeling more valuable during financially strong periods and less valuable during financially difficult ones. This equation is not accurate, though it is understandable given how much cultural messaging reinforces it. Your value as a person remains constant, regardless of what your bank account currently shows. This does not mean financial circumstances do not matter practically, they clearly do, but your inherent worth was never actually tied to your financial situation in the first place, no matter how convincingly it sometimes feels that way. Here is the 17th truth. Perfectionism around money often prevents people from taking any action at all, because they are waiting to have the perfect plan, the perfect budget, the perfect strategy, before beginning. This waiting can last for years, during which nothing actually improves, because an imperfect action taken today will always accomplish more than a perfect plan that never actually gets implemented. Release the need for a perfect financial plan before you begin. A simple, imperfect budget, tracked consistently, will teach you more about your actual spending patterns than an elaborate plan you never actually follow. Start imperfectly. Adjust as you learn. This applies to money exactly as it applies to every other area of life already discussed. Here is the 18th truth. Financial anxiety sometimes convinces people to avoid opportunities that could genuinely help them, because those opportunities involve some level of risk, and risk feels unbearable when you are already anxious about your financial security. A new job with better pay but less certainty. A skill worth investing time or money into learning. A conversation asking for a raise or better compensation. These opportunities often remain untaken, not because they are unwise, but because anxiety makes any uncertainty feel more dangerous than it objectively is. This does not mean taking reckless financial risks. It means examining whether your hesitation toward a particular opportunity is based on genuine, careful assessment, or simply on anxiety avoiding any uncertainty whatsoever, regardless of the actual potential benefit involved. Here is the 19th truth. The relationship between money and self-discipline is often misunderstood. Many people believe that if they simply had more willpower, their financial situation would automatically improve. But financial behavior is shaped by far more than willpower alone, including the systems and habits already in place around you. Automatic savings transfers, for example, require far less ongoing willpower than manually deciding to save each month, because the decision only has to be made once, during setup, rather than repeatedly, indefinitely. Consider which parts of your financial life could be supported by better systems, rather than relying purely on willpower and memory. Automating what can be automated frees up mental energy for the decisions that genuinely require your active attention and judgment. Here is the 20th truth. Ultimately, worry about money persists not because worrying is useful, but because it has felt, mistakenly, like the responsible thing to do, like caring enough about the situation to think about it constantly. But true responsibility looks different from worry. True responsibility looks like honest awareness, deliberate planning, consistent small action, and the willingness to seek help or information when needed. Worry, by contrast, simply cycles the same fear repeatedly, without ever producing new solutions or genuine forward movement. Releasing worry does not mean releasing responsibility. It means finally distinguishing between the two, and choosing to invest your limited energy into the kind of responsibility that actually improves your financial situation over time, rather than the kind of worry that only exhausts you without ever helping. Now that these truths have been spoken, here is the instruction heaven is actually asking of you today, the thing to do first, before the worry can genuinely begin to lift. First, look honestly at your actual financial numbers, without avoidance, this week. Second, notice one old belief about money that you inherited rather than chose, and gently begin questioning whether it still serves you. Third, take one small, concrete financial action, however small, that moves you toward greater clarity or stability. Fourth, release the guilt attached to wanting financial ease, replacing it with simple, honest acknowledgement of a reasonable human desire. Fifth, if you have been struggling in silence, consider one resource, whether a person, a book, a free tool, or a professional, that could offer guidance you have not yet sought. None of this requires waiting for money to simply arrive from some outside source. It requires you, today, to begin engaging with your actual financial reality honestly, deliberately, and without the shame that has likely made this far harder than it needed to be for far too long. This is the message heaven wanted you to hear today. Not a promise of money appearing without effort, but something more valuable: permission to face your finances honestly, without fear controlling the process, and with the quiet confidence that comes from taking deliberate, informed action, one honest step at a time. Carry this message with you. Return to it whenever old financial fear tries to pull you back into avoidance or panic. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you begin building a calmer, more honest relationship with your finances. Before this message closes, there is one more layer worth sitting with, because it addresses something rarely discussed openly when it comes to money and worry. Think about how differently you might feel about your finances if you separated the emotional weight of money from the practical mechanics of money. The practical mechanics are simply numbers: income, expenses, debts, savings, things that can be tracked, planned, and gradually improved through deliberate action. The emotional weight is everything else: the fear, the shame, the comparison, the old inherited beliefs, the sense of identity wrapped up in financial status. Most people experience these two layers as one tangled mess, unable to look at the practical numbers without immediately being flooded by the emotional weight attached to them. This is exactly why so many people avoid looking at their finances honestly, not because the numbers themselves are unbearable, but because the emotional reaction to the numbers feels unbearable. Learning to separate these two layers, even partially, can make an enormous difference. When you sit down to review your actual financial numbers, try to approach it the way you might approach reviewing numbers for any neutral project, with curiosity and clarity, rather than immediately layering shame, fear, or self-judgment on top of what you find. The numbers themselves are neutral information. It is the emotional story you tell about them that determines how heavy they feel. Consider, too, how your relationship with money may have been shaped by specific formative moments you have not thought about in years. A particular conversation about money that happened in your household growing up. A moment of financial embarrassment you experienced at school or among friends. A time when money, or the lack of it, caused visible stress or conflict between people you loved. These moments, even if seemingly small at the time, often leave lasting imprints on how a person relates to money throughout their entire adult life. Bringing these formative moments into conscious awareness, rather than leaving them buried and unconsciously influential, can be a powerful step toward finally updating an old financial narrative that may no longer reflect your current adult reality. You are not the child who first learned that money meant fear, or shame, or conflict. You are an adult now, capable of examining that old lesson and consciously choosing whether to keep carrying it forward. Think about the specific physical sensations that arise in your body when you think about money. Tightness in your chest. A knot in your stomach. Shallow breathing. Clenched hands. These physical responses are worth noticing, because they often reveal how deeply the financial fear lives in your body, not just in your thoughts. Addressing financial anxiety sometimes requires more than logical reframing alone. It can also benefit from simple body-based practices: slow breathing, gentle movement, conscious relaxation, practiced specifically during moments of financial stress, to help calm the physical activation that pure logic alone often cannot fully address. The next time financial worry arises, notice where you feel it in your body first, before immediately jumping into thoughts about solutions. Simply acknowledging the physical sensation, breathing through it gently, can sometimes reduce its intensity enough to allow clearer thinking to follow. Consider also the quiet difference between scarcity and simplicity. Scarcity is fear-driven, an anxious sense that there will never be enough, driving decisions from a place of panic. Simplicity is values-driven, a conscious choice to live with less in certain areas, in order to prioritize what actually matters most to you. These two states can look similar from the outside, both involving modest spending or careful resource management, but internally, they feel completely different, one rooted in fear, the other rooted in intentional choice. If your current financial approach feels more like scarcity than simplicity, this distinction is worth sitting with. You deserve a relationship with money rooted in conscious values, not one driven purely by anxious fear of never having enough, regardless of your actual circumstances. As this message moves toward its true close, remember that the goal was never to eliminate every financial concern instantly, or to pretend that real financial challenges do not exist. Real challenges deserve real, practical attention. The goal was simply to separate genuine, productive financial action from the unproductive cycle of constant worry that has likely been exhausting you for a very long time, without ever actually improving your circumstances. You are capable of facing your finances honestly, taking deliberate action where possible, and releasing the parts of financial fear that were never actually helping in the first place. This is not a promise that every financial difficulty will resolve instantly or easily. It is an invitation to approach your financial life with more clarity, more self-compassion, and more deliberate action than fear alone has ever been able to provide. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you begin building a calmer, more honest relationship with your finances. There is one final layer to this message, and it may be the most practical part of everything shared today, so stay with these words a little longer before you go. Think about how you define enough, specifically, in concrete terms, rather than as a vague, ever-moving target. Many people carry a general sense that they need more money to feel secure, without ever actually defining what that number looks like, what expenses it would cover, what buffer it would provide against emergencies. This vagueness keeps the goal permanently unclear, which makes it very difficult to feel any sense of progress, because progress toward an undefined target is almost impossible to measure or feel. Consider taking time this week to actually define, as specifically as you can, what financial stability would look like for you. Not unlimited wealth, not an arbitrary huge number, but a specific, realistic picture, enough income to cover your needs comfortably, a specific emergency fund amount, a specific debt payoff target. Specific goals, even modest ones, tend to feel more achievable and less overwhelming than a vague, undefined sense that you simply need more. Think, too, about the language you use when discussing money with yourself and with others. Do you speak about your financial situation with curiosity and honesty, or with shame and self-criticism? The next time you catch yourself thinking or speaking negatively about your financial situation, notice the tone. Would you speak to a friend in the same harsh way you sometimes speak to yourself about money? If not, Consider extending yourself the same patience and understanding you would naturally offer someone else facing similar circumstances. Consider the specific triggers that tend to spike your financial anxiety most intensely. Checking your bank account balance. Receiving an unexpected bill. Seeing others discuss their financial success. Certain times of the month, such as when bills are due. Identifying your specific triggers allows you to prepare for them consciously, rather than being caught off guard repeatedly by the same predictable spikes in anxiety. Once you know your triggers, you can develop a specific, small response for each one. Before checking your bank balance, take 3 slow breaths first, reminding yourself that whatever the number shows, you are capable of responding to it thoughtfully. Before opening an unexpected bill, remind yourself that this is simply information, not a verdict on your worth or your capability. These small, intentional pauses can prevent an automatic anxiety spiral from taking over each time a financial trigger arises. Think about the role of gratitude in your relationship with money, not toxic positivity that ignores genuine struggle, but honest gratitude for what current resources do provide, even while working toward more stability. Research consistently shows that gratitude practices, done honestly rather than forced, tend to reduce anxiety and increase a sense of overall well-being, even when external circumstances remain challenging. This does not mean pretending financial struggle does not exist or does not matter. It means occasionally, deliberately, noticing what your current resources do allow, however modest, alongside your awareness of what you are still working to build. Both truths can exist together, the reality of current struggle and genuine gratitude for what is nonetheless present. Consider, too, how helping others, even in small ways, when you are financially able, can shift your relationship with money in a positive direction. This is not a suggestion to give beyond your means, especially while you are working to build your own stability. But even small acts of generosity, when genuinely within your capacity, can counter a scarcity mindset by demonstrating to yourself that you have enough, currently, to share even a small portion with someone else. This should never come from guilt or obligation, and should never come at the expense of your own genuine financial needs. It is simply an observation that generosity, practiced from a place of genuine capacity rather than compulsion, often coexists with a healthier, less fear-driven relationship with money overall. Think about the specific story you want to be able to tell, 1 year from today, about your relationship with money. Not necessarily a story of dramatic wealth, but a story of growth, of increased clarity, of reduced anxiety, of deliberate action taken consistently over time. Holding this future story in mind, specifically, can help guide the small decisions you make today, connecting present actions to a meaningful future outcome, rather than each financial decision feeling isolated and disconnected from any larger purpose. Remember that building a healthier relationship with money, like every other form of genuine change discussed throughout messages like this one, unfolds gradually, through repeated small choices, rather than through one dramatic transformation. Be patient with yourself through this process. Old financial fear, especially fear formed early in life, does not dissolve instantly simply because you have gained new understanding. It gradually loosens its grip through consistent, gentle, repeated practice of the principles shared today. You are capable of this. Not because financial ease is guaranteed to arrive quickly or easily, but because you are capable of facing your finances honestly, taking deliberate action within your control, and releasing the parts of financial fear that have never actually been helping you in the first place. Before this message ends, take one final moment for yourself. Consider one specific financial number you have been avoiding looking at clearly. Silently commit to yourself to look at that number honestly within the next few days, not to judge it, but simply to know it clearly, so you can begin working with it deliberately rather than avoiding it out of fear. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you begin building a calmer, more honest relationship with your finances.